All right, one more session before the networking break. And the only person that I could think of that could fill this spot on day 2 is a cherished, lovely friend of AMAC, Kosta Petrov. And he runs P World. He is, I say a friend of AMAC, but he is a friend of the industry and helps AMAC shine when it comes to measurement and evaluation. By featuring those best practices, he and his team are really committed to globally whenever they put on their sessions. Now, a fun fact, and why I thought he's the only person who could hold this spot and keep your attention, because he's going to talk about some pretty heavy stuff. This is not a Debbie Downer. This is a co-writer of a Eurovision winning song for Damascus. So when you think, wow, this guy's heavy, I want you to think about all of the good and joy that he puts into the world too. And do not confuse the importance of this message with the person who's delivering it. And so, Kosta, if you would please join us on stage and share your magic with the AMAC audience.
So I think my presentation is the only presentation that didn't follow the AMAC branding. Sorry, Jonah, for that. But before I start, I work in the events industry, and you're all data people. And based on all research, event management is the top 3 most stressful jobs in the world. So I would like all of us to give a warm applause to Jonah and the whole team for organizing this. And you know, we live in an age when a lot of people say, oh, I'm self-made. I don't believe that bullshit. I think you need a great team to make it happen. And AMAC has been part of our family for so long, and much of our success is because of Jonah, Nicole Morio's support, so thank you so much. So I'm having a very depressing presentation. Why did you put this presentation at the end after so many fun presentations? We're gonna talk about how the world is falling apart. It is, but okay, a little bit about me. I'm founder of P World. P World is a creative agency which we established 13 years ago. I write books. I was a songwriter for the grand jury winning song for North Macedonia at the 2019 Eurovision Song Contest. So Google my song. And I was 2.5 years vice president in my country. I'm still not psychologically recovered from my role in politics, so will not. Has anyone worked in politics here? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, yeah. I'm still not there. Cool. A little about P World. P World is an agency we started in 2010. We have an office in Skopje. In 2016, we opened an office in Montreal, because the sad truth is you cannot build a global brand from a country that not many people know about. We've done around 1,000 events in 40 countries. I'm putting this image from an event in 2015 when the world seemed like a very nice place. This is actually a photo of our first ever event, and actually the first ever event, global marketing event, held in Iran, Tehran. So we did it in 2015 for the first time ever. We brought like global marketeers. Of course, now there is no way we can do it. We also run a crisis communications consultancy. So we do a lot of advising on preparation, on updating crisis scenarios, and of course a lot of in-house trainings. So I told you, running events, top 3 stressful jobs in the world. You know, up to like a couple of years ago, I thought I've seen it all. I mean, oil prices going down. And then like my key markets falling apart. You know, one day there's so much money in one market, the next day oil prices went down, and that's it. I've seen we had to cancel multiple events because of a volcano in Iceland erupting. Terrorist attacks a day before an event. Floods, you name it. I really thought, you know, okay, good, now I've experienced everything there is to experience in the world. And then COVID happened. And because I'm talking about crisis planning, everyone says it was unexpected. Actually, pandemics happen every 100 years, so there was nothing surprising about COVID. The reality is we weren't prepared. Okay, so we adapted the business. COVID, for some PR agencies, was a great time. because a lot of companies were lost. They didn't know what to do, so business was good. And then COVID finished. Yay, we are back to normality. Russia invaded Ukraine. You know what the result was. Not just inflation, but for the first time ever in modern history, companies started to take a stance, like on a global scale. Who are they going to support? Companies pulling out of Russia. Then Hamas attacking Israel, and the aftermath after that. And I honestly believe that the next thing is going to happen is... And talking about crisis. So that was my presentation. Bye. Can someone help me with this technical thing? Thank you so much. Any questions? And the next slide was actually the best slide. It was supposed to be like, yay, cool. Okay, cool. So let's go back. Hamas attacked Israel in October. Again, division, companies taking a stance, and I really think that the next thing would be this, an alien invasion. I'm sure it's happening. Put it in your crisis plans. Talk to NASA, talk to like space agencies. This is probably going to happen. This is very cliche, but it's true. Our world is changing rapidly, not just technology. We had a lot of talks about technology, but I don't know if you have this feeling when you wake up in the morning and you're like, is this it? Is this the end of the world? You know, is this like how it's going to end? There are 50 plus elections, high-stake elections this year around the world. We had an election in my country 2 weeks ago. A right-wing party won. And probably this is going to be a wave we're going to see around the world. As a result, our societies have never been more polarized. And everyone is skeptical. No one trusts anyone. It's like, it's hard. Then ESG is here. So it's not anymore about the fancy PR photos we take of our CSR initiatives and like, you know, oh, we're helping this, we're helping that. No, now it's about metrics, it's about strategic things. And of course, everyone was talking about AI. I spoke with someone about AI and he said something really good because part of the people are like, oh, AI is great. Some of the people are really scared. But one of the speakers that we work with a lot, he says, you know, people had the same reactions when the mobile phone came out, when social media came out. You know, it's a wave, 1 or 2 years, and then it will just become part of our reality. So hopefully, this will happen also. So, you get it. We live in an age of permacrisis. Have you heard of this term, permacrisis? So it means that crises are our reality. I remember 10 years ago when we were doing crisis planning for companies, it was something that could happen, would happen, but most probably it's not going to happen. But it definitely happens on a holiday or on the weekend. So as you know, crises always happen on holidays and the weekends. And this is something you should consider when you do crisis planning. So, to be honest, being a PR and communications professional, it's quite hard these days. Because you have to do promo of all the great stuff your company is doing. But at the same time, you also have to keep one eye always open because a crisis could happen any day, any minute. So I want to share with you some of the scenarios you should consider when doing crisis planning. Of course, like anything is possible. But based on what we are doing with our clients, with our crisis communications bootcamp in 30 countries around the world, these are the topics that communications professionals are most concerned about. Cyber attacks. And this is what still surprised me. There are so many big companies that still don't have cyber attack in their crisis planning or in the crisis scenario. How many of you here have cyber attacks in your crisis plans? Yeah, see what I'm talking about. So only up until now, there were 5 billion known records breached in 2019 publicly disclosed incident. You know, sometimes companies need 3 to 6 months to realize that they've been attacked and that their data has been breached. And the chances of cyber attack happening to your company are much bigger than any other crisis. So, a couple of the things, my advice what to do is first of all, start that conversation. If you don't have cyber attack in your crisis plan, Start talking about it. What do you have in place today? If you don't have it, how we can improve? Educate your employees. Most of the cyber attacks happen because an employee clicks on a link, and then that link infects the whole company, and the data got breached. So tell your employees not to use password as a password. So use complicated password. Do exercises. All of this crisis planning, it's about exercising. So we don't work with clients when the crisis happens. Usually companies would call, oh my God, this is happening, help us. No, we are not doing it. Crisis is about planning. So create exercise or a tabletop based on an AI incident. See what you are missing and update your crisis plan. And most of all, work with your IT to secure your network. The reality is cyber attack is going to happen, and how you handle it will determine your reputation in the future. Now, this is probably the most complicated one, taking a stance on political and societal issues. The day when the companies would silently observe what's happening around the world are over. We experienced it with Russia and Ukraine. We are experiencing now with Israel and Palestine. Some companies see it as a PR exercise, and most of the time they fail when they take a stance, because what happens when you take a stance? Half of your consumers will be very happy. Half of them will be very, very upset. But how to do it the right way? The reality is your customer wants to hear from you, so you cannot just hide. You cannot live in a silo and think like, oh no, I don't want to talk about this. We are producing food, we are producing sneakers, we are handling data, so we don't take a stand on any issues. The best companies create a manual, and they define which issues they will support. So US Bank has an amazing manual on taking a political stance, where together with the employees, they sit down and decide, okay, as a company, these are the issues that we're going to support. Do it step by step. You don't have to go immediately take a huge stand on an issue, but start step by step, and then measure the impact and go to the next step. Most importantly, don't pull back, because when you take a stance, the first reaction will be a huge backlash. And this is when most of the companies fail. Remember Target 2 years ago, Pride Week? First, all of their stores had this collection for Pride. There was a huge backlash. They took the collection out. Bud Light, I'm sure you heard of Bud Light. The crisis that happened with Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender influencer. They decided to give Dylan a can to promote Bud Light. The moment there was a backlash, the company pulled back. They didn't even contact the influencer to talk, about the crisis. There is always going to be a backlash. But the companies that really succeed, like Ben & Jerry, Nike, they are the ones that don't pull back. And finally, engage your employees. During their breaks, cigarette breaks, lunch breaks, your employees are already talking about these issues. So they expect you to take a stance. Then it's diversity and inclusion crisis. And to tell you the truth, as a white person from Eastern Europe, a couple of years ago, this was for me a little bit science fiction. But being inclusive doesn't mean just having all races present in your company or in senior leaders, but really creating an inclusive environment where there is psychological safety, where your colleagues, your friends, your boss, anyone, the managers can talk openly about certain issues in the company. So I think it's our responsibility to foster inclusive leadership. Everyone should have very clear policies in place. There should be open communication about this kind of issues. Obviously, continuous education is key. And as you know, you should always monitor and measure progress. One of the biggest crises in the USA and Canada are happening because, companies are talking about DEI, but their boards and their CEO are still we're living in the 80s or 90s. So it's not just about putting DEI on your website and hiring a head of DEI to tick the box. It's actually something that you have to work on daily. And it's not a passing trend. Maybe taking a political stance in a couple of years, it will be a normal, but I think DEI will stay forever. because everything you do, your campaign, the language which you communicate during a crisis should be inclusive. You know, there's so many companies like doing crisis communications in areas where there is like mixed nationalities, so half of the population is not getting the message because the company is not being inclusive in their communications. Then there is greenwashing or purpose washing, and this is happening because of the huge rise of ESG. So no, if you put a green color on your website, you're not like a green company. And if you put we are sustainable company or if you have recycling in your office, doesn't mean that you're like a full ESG company. So this is what I love about ESG, that it's actually about measurable things. It's about metrics. And I always say, you know, be transparent. No one is number one in ESG. No one. We are still walking the walk. So be transparent. These are the things that we are working on. These are our results. Set realistic goals. God, I hate when companies are like, by 2035 we'll do this. By 2000, no, you will not. So set realistic goals. If you do something, get a certification body, local or international, to say, you know, this company has actually done this. Involve your employees. The best companies with the best ESG strategies, like, you know, like Husky Technologies, for example, in Canada, McDonald's, their employees are fully involved in the ESG strategy. The ESG strategy actually comes from the employees. It's not that somebody, some board or CEO thought this is what we should do and then like, here, do it. But actually, it's initiatives that are supported by companies. And again, focus on real impact. It's not about marketing. A well-known European fashion brand, they did a huge campaign on how sustainable they are. And like a day later, it's like, it was all marketing. So ESG is not a sprint. You know, do it step by step and be very transparent when communicating. Getting canceled. I don't know if you know, but we live in an era of cancel culture. A couple of weeks ago, the Met Gala happened. I don't know if you're on TikTok, this was like the #1 trending. But after the Met Gala, there is this new wave of fans blocking superstars and celebrities. Like Taylor Swift is being blocked. Kim Kardashian is being blocked. Like in millions, they're using millions followers because simply they are tone deaf and then they don't take a stance on important issues. So, how not to get canceled? #1, be authentic, and that means when you make a mistake, admit it. Don't hide under the table. Stay informed, especially about when you do a launch. When is a good thing to say what? You know, when there's a huge crisis happening, like in the world, you don't do a fancy ball or like completely off messaging. So Google and see what's happening in your market. A lot of international companies, you would be surprised. You know, we are doing this big celebration, but then in one of their markets is, you know, there can be a flood, there can be a terrorist attack, but no, but we're launching this globally. No, you're not. Like, follow what's happening in that particular market. Obviously, it's all about culture of inclusion. It's all about dialogue. And I think trainings on cultural sensitivity, what to say, how to say things, ethical communication, it's very, very important. It doesn't mean that if you follow these steps, these 5 steps, you will not get canceled. Probably all of us will get canceled at one point in time in today's polarized world because we cannot make everyone happy. But we need to be more sensitive what we are doing. And of course, AI. I love AI. But at the same time, the amount of disinformation with AI, the cybersecurity threats, who owns the content? I mean, you all followed Scarlett Johansson's letter a couple of years ago when she wrote an email to Sam Altman saying, you know, you actually hired me, you wanted me to be the voice, but I said no, and you found someone who has a similar voice to me. So these are the crises that will constantly happen. But a couple of things. As I mentioned, in cybersecurity, it's all about risk mapping. Sit down with your key stakeholders as a company. Which aspect of AI could be a threat to our company? Include those crises in your crisis plan and prepare for it. Establish AI corporate governance. I know like there's still like in some countries there are AI laws, but I think we are still early. But it's up to you as a company to create that corporate governance when it comes to AI. And a lot of companies are doing it. And then explore the AI tools that work for your company or don't work for your company. But as you've seen from what I said up until now, it's all about planning and preparation. And you don't need a lot of money, you don't have a lot of budget to do a tabletop exercise to see, if something like this could happen, what would be our reaction? What would be our statement? Because when a crisis happens, you're not going to have time to sit down and write your statement or prepare your CEO for an interview if you don't have already that planned. So the world looks very depressing, but what is the amazing thing about the world going crazy? Is that for years we were talking about communications pros getting a seat at the table. And I think finally we have that seat at the table. And I'm not sure we want it anymore, but we got it. So if there is one positive thing out of it, this is it. And my final tip is actually two things. Number one, we communications professionals, I think other than being psychologically disturbed because we love crisis, we think that we need to save the company, the CEO, the world. We don't. At the end of the day, it's just a job, And we have to realize that, CEOs will not take your advice, and that's fine. What I love the most is the part at the end when silently you say inside of you, I told you so. I told you so. But focus on yourself. Times are crazy. Everyone expects you to have the magic wand, but we are not magicians. We are just communications professionals. And the final tip is, the world is so crazy that I think that you should have every possible scenario in your crisis plan except the alien attack, because I'm not 100% sure that it's going to happen. So I hope I didn't depress you. I would like to thank you. Yeah, good. That wasn't depressing, right? And now I'm going to sing the Eurovision song. I'm kidding. Me and Jonna will sing the Eurovision song.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we can talk at the coffee break that my skepticism of the fact that now the U.S. government is openly talking about aliens, that maybe you should put it back in. Because if they're talking about it, there's probably something much more to it.
Hopefully not. Seriously, we need a break. We don't need alien attack.
Arizona Lights,
Yeah,
Google
yeah,
it,
yeah.
horrifying. Sleep at night, barely. But there's so much to the current status, right? And I think when you talk about marketers and dealing with the permacrisis and all of those elements, at your agency, how do you balance the emotional and mental health of the teams with that so that they can be cognizant and clear, so when they're looking at a launch of an event, they know what else is going on to avoid those self-inflicted crises, right? What does that look like for you and your team, having worked with them around the events piece too? I mean, they're very cohesive, they're very dialed in, so how do you create that culture and then manage that?
Not just in events, I think in communications especially, is we need, first of all, we need that psychological support, because, I can laugh about all of these things, but these are serious things, and they affect our mental health, they affect our, our communication with the family, with our friends, because we as communications professionals really think that we can save any situation. So probably it's because I turned 40, a couple of months ago. So suddenly something happened, and that's what I say to my colleagues and even to my clients, it's just a job. It's just a job. And I worked in I was vice president for my government during COVID-19. I've experienced some things that, they're a little bit psychologically hard to understand. But the number one thing is to take care of yourself. And especially in crisis, this is one of the things I say to my clients. Okay, these are the four main people when a crisis happens, but who goes to sleep when? They need to take a break, Because crisis, like the first couple of days can go crazy, but you need to take that break. You need to like refocus and rethink. So, and especially in the communications world, I think it's really important to have this conversation about our mental health, because we're all going crazy.
Some of us winning, like I say, not a competition, but when you make it one, I'm all in. So thank you for taking that full circle for us right before the last networking break. And so thank you again, Kosta. Another round of applause for Kosta for bringing us to the stage. We really appreciate you. Yeah, such a pleasure. And we were a minute early.